Okay, we're over on my bench here just for the moment, and we have the bottom shaft here laid out on the multi-power gearbox. So I thought I'd just do this over here just to show how it is set up. Now these back gears, we don't worry about those too much. They just slide on with the round edge facing each other, and once they're fixed between the bearing and that circlip, they don't move anywhere. But when we come to this front housing here, or the front assembly, well, that's where it becomes interesting. So you'll notice on the gear here, the gear with the bush inside, there's a gear, and you can see there's a little ramp there. There's a smooth edge on this side, so there's a smooth edge here, and there's a sharp edge there. Now, on your multi-power box, when you do when it overruns, so to speak, well, the torque on the back wheels forces this gear on that spring away from the drive, and so that can freewheel. But then when it comes to the shaft driving it, well, it grabs it and away it goes. So that sits in there like that, with the spring tension coming on to the gear, and that sits like that. On the shaft, when we sit it on there for a bit of a run, this spline here is on an angle. You can see there's a slight angle on it, so when we line this up, you can see it. And so when the spring tension's on here and the overrun comes in, it actually pushes this up and lets it free run. So but with the tension, it's harder to do, of course, but it will overrun, and that's what people say when they say it'll overrun and run down the hill on you. Well, it will. That's how it does it. Now, on this tractor, it had the multi-power taken away, so they took this spring out. They put a spacer on here just to hold that in solid, and that's all they did. They left a couple of sealing rings off and a few things like that. So once that goes on with the spring, this comes down over the top, and there's a circlip in here, and that holds that together. But what we have to do first, before we can do any of this, is we need to get this bottom shaft in the box, and we have the gears loose here, so we have to oil up the outside of this bearing, and when we oil up the bearing, that helps it get through the hole in the front of the box. It comes from the front to the back from memory. I'm not an expert on these, I'm learning as I go. I've done some over the years, but look, it's a long time between drinks, so I'll get everything over on the gearbox all set up, and we'll just do this one shaft. The first shaft in the gearbox, we'll concentrate on that for the moment. Okay, let's make a start. So make sure you have an oil can. Now, I've oiled the bores of the shaft here, where the bearings go. So what we need to do first is bring the shaft in. And we bring him in from the front, and we have to fit him through that front bearing bore here. So as we come through there, make sure your circlip's already, the little snap rings on to hold these gears in. And as we come through there, we feed these gears on. I don't want to stay there because I've got it on an angle for filming, but anyway, we'll work it out. And once we have them there, we can bring this bearing back, slide these up further, and bring the shaft into the next bearing bore back. So Now we have to come back out of there, so continue coming backwards, and that gives us an opportunity now to put those front gears in. Now, oil is your friend, use lots of oil. Bit more on that bearing. So first gear is the one with the bush in it. So we slide him down into the housing and just start to bring the shaft through if we can. Now we need to have this collar. He should push right hard against there. Oh, sorry, then this gear with the spring. Now the spring has to go backwards onto that collar. So sitting there, that gear can sit back there, then we can bring all this other forward. And line the try and line all the bearings and all up, but we are fighting that spring a little bit, so that's okay. We need to go forward enough that this back gear can go on the proper place where it needs to go, and I need to lift it all up a little. So there we go. So this shaft, this gear is on the shaft where it's supposed to go. We have to line this, the crooked spline up. There we go, and that can lock back into there. And we can also line this front gear up and get him hooked up to the, oh sorry, you're still in frame. Yep. By the time I have lights here and cameras, I haven't got much area to do me dance with me safety boots on. Yeah. Okay, so you can feel that. That's where it's supposed to be. Right, so we can bring these two gears back, and we can put this circlip on now, and that will hold the gears right back. And look, it doesn't matter which way we do it. I don't believe it does anyway. We have the back bearing to go on the outer and on the very back of this shaft, and we should be able to just bump that on a little, holding back against it. So that has to come a bit more up onto the shoulder there as yet. I've got an alloy punch, I'll give it a bit of a razzle with my alloy punch. I'll let him come back just a little. That's come off again, but look, that's no trouble at this stage. Okay, so that's got our rear circlip groove available, so we'll pop that circlip on. I'm not sure you can see that. No, it's out of frame a little bit, but there's nothing to it. So the back circlip goes on the... That's actually stretched a little, I'll have to deal with that, I think. And then as all this comes forward, that gives us a chance then to put this snap ring on there. So look, I'll do that. I'll need to shift the camera a bit to, to get in and have a good razzle dazzle with it. But I'll see how we go. I'll come back in a little while. So at this stage, we've got the bottom shaft sitting in, and we can see the spring preload there. We have it fed all the way back, and the back shaft has come forward as much as it can. Everything's against the bearing. So now we can pop this circlip on here, this snap ring. Then yep, that's where it should be. And that bottom shaft, apart from the PDO shaft that comes up through the centre and hooks on here, that's done. We have everything in place. We'll go down the top and I'll just show you what it looks like in there. So this is the bottom shaft. We've got a needle bearing in here. We'll put grease on that shortly. We have the snap ring there. We have a snap ring here. When the housing for your high-low comes in, that will hold all this forward. Normally it would go forward, no worries. Now, if I can lean you forward there, I think you can see what's going on there. The back of the bottom shaft there, those gears stay put. That engages reverse gear, that's your reverse idler up on the other side there. And when we come into the front housing, that's your two gears there, your two multi-power gears with the clutch inside them. So once the high-low housing comes on the back, that'll sit there forward, and that, look, that turns beautifully now. Okay, we'll move on. After we've got the top section in here, and I actually got the front shaft in, we can now drop the PDO shaft down, and there's a needle bearing at the back, the hollow drive shaft. Make sure that you grease the needles up so they can sit right up where they need to be, and we can slide the shaft in like that. So I'll have a look. That might be a bit dark for you now. Oh, you can still sort of see it, can't you, really? Okay, so look, all I do now is we have a gasket here, and look, I'll put a bit of grease on the gasket. You know I like to put grease on gaskets, don't you? This is just a lever for the high-low. I've put bits in and taken them out for filming, and the shed's rattling a fair bit, so I've done a couple of things twice, so we'll see how we go. If we can refilm bits and pieces, we probably will, and see. But for the moment, what we need to do is put this housing on, and just pop a bolt in each corner. Lift that up. It's getting quite breezy, the shed's rattling fairly well, so. And if we nip this fella up here, I should be able to go and bump that shaft forward into that bearing. You can feel that's right home. Now, I think if we bring the light around, we should be able to fit a small washer, a thrust washer, and a snap ring. So can we get that in? Look, it feels like we can. I might just give that bearing a bit of a tap from the front. And that should let us put that fella on, and I just need to feel if I can get the snap ring in just yet. Oh, pretty well. I might just nip this up just a bit more if I can. Okay, I'll find some circuit pliers. Right, back again. Someone, look, I've been helping someone do a little bit of work, and they've been helping me tidy up the shed. And I'd say they picked this circlip up, it's an old one, and popped it in the kit. And I do have the correct one there. So we're all hooked up there, that's good. Now, on the outer housing here, like we've got grease inside there. On the outer housing here, we have an O-ring, so we'll pop these screws out once more. We've actually just done this filming with the shed and all. We've just filmed this top bit without the bottom bit in, just to. Well, we've done this bit twice, just to try and get a bit better quality in the videos. But oh boy, it's hard some days. So run a bit of 515 around the surface here. There's an O-ring in here to do the sealing for us, so it should be okay. Now if we run that fella into there, and it'll just fall down while I'm picking up the bolts. That's alright too. Because this is a tin cover, we use screws with flat washers on them. Okay, that's the PDO in. We'll solder on and we'll put this all back. There's another thrust washer here, and we're not up to putting that in yet, but when it goes in, the front section of the thrust washer here, you can see a mark where the needle bearing goes, and the needle bearing up your main front shaft here, you must put that in and put grease on it first, because once it's in there, there's no way that you can get that needle bearing back in. So for this little section of the job, I'll try and hold it all together if I can. Now this might be easier said than done. But this is our clutch pack. I've got a zippy tie around it until now. So this goes with the gear to the back, and I'm holding it together to try and hold the plates all lined up in the clutch plates where they're supposed to be. So we can bring this shaft in I can sit that and try and bring this up through the back without the plates dropping. Now you may notice I've taken the sealing rings off so I don't damage them, but at this stage all I'm looking to do is hold this gear together, bring it all forward, and I'll have to line the spline up with the outer drum, and I think I've probably just lost the plates. Oh no, that's feeling pretty good. So now that's sitting there, we can bring this washer into the top. Might have to push this bottom shaft forward just a bit because it's hanging down, because the gearbox is sitting down for videoing. Things get harder when you have the camera there. There we go. And there's me drop for this video. I think that's the first one so far for this video, so I'm doing alright. Right, so for the moment, that's sitting back there. This plate, they're right in, that's picked up all the clutch plates, that's where we want it. So we might go around the front now and put the front housing on just to support this little bit before we slide the back gears in. Okay, this is from the bell housing end. Now we have a thrust washer here. It has to come down and it sits in the splines next to the clutch pack. So the splines actually stop that from turning. This clutch drum is never going to turn because it's splined on here, but where this sits up the centre it will be. So we also at this stage need to pop our oil rings back on, so I'll try and get those into position and make sure they're locked in. That's one. That's two. Now we'll put some grease to help them centralise. Now if you remember on our older videos we already tested these clutch packs, so we know we're going pretty well with them. A little bit of grease here, that's where your front seal goes. Okay, we'll go and get that clutch pack. Right, I've gone and got the housing, your control valve. There's an O-ring around this and a gasket, and I've just put some grease around there. We've got grease on the shaft here, so we should be able to feed this in gently. Now, feel for the seal. So I'll just start a bolt if I can, and then off camera I'll button him all up. And I might have to get a couple of different bolts for here, because if you remember we never had the control valve arm on, and I've since gone and bought one, so we may be able to set all that up while we're going. But in the meantime we just need to just bring this just around a little. And I'm sort of holding a little bit of pressure at the back here, so. And that's feeling pretty good. The hole's lined up, yep, that's okay. These mightn't even be the right bolts yet, they're just bolts I had sitting, so I grabbed them just for the job. So I'll tighten that up and then we'll come back and have a look at the back again. Right, well I've got everything just sitting in there loosely at the moment, and I've got everything buttoned up, and this control valve lever here, that's what we never had before. So I've had to put a couple of washers in behind this, and when your multi-power works, it just pushes and pulls this lever out the top, and that just pushes or pulls, opens or closes your control valve. So at the moment there's nothing much we can do apart from make sure that's sitting in there nice and deep, and when you push and pull your multi-power lever, that will come, and it sits against the housing here and against here. And this oil cooler pipe here, that one goes on there, that's still loose. I haven't bothered to tighten that up just yet. And this one here is still loose, so I had to bring him in behind, which I wasn't sure about because at the time of doing the, when we pulled it apart, we didn't have any of that. So I've nipped these up, but they go straight into the oil gallery. So what we need to do now is one by one, pull them out. Now we know it's sitting where we need it to be. Give the threads a good clean. And put a healthy dose of Loctite 515 on those bolts. And that will seal that thread up for us. We can do them one at a time, do them right up tight when you do them up this time. We'll do this top fella. So this is a 35 one, it will work fine. I even took the whole lever assembly, so I have to work the whole lot out yet. Right, now before we forget, we'll nip these fellas up. The shed's making a bloody racket for us, but that's okay. And that's tight. And this is where the main pipe from the pump comes, goes up to the cooler, then comes back. Pretty sure that's good. That's turning nicely, that's turning. Right, we're up to the back shaft, so these gears got a couple little rusty stains on them that they've had, but look, they're certainly usable, no problems with them. And what we can do here is just bring the shaft in from the back, then bring the front gear in. Now we have a bearing we can put in the front housing here, and this bit goes up to the needle bearing, then the other bearing sits on this flat here. So we've got that all tidied up. And we should be able to put him up in and bump him forward into it. So I'll get set up to do that and we'll come back. Okay, we'll put a bit of oil down in through here. Now what we have to do is bump that shaft forward. So we'll try and line everything up as we go. I'll see if I can sort that out. That's started a little crooked, so we'll have to try and support everything as we go in. There we go. Now the front there can sit up inside the bearing, and that should be sitting up inside the needle bearing up the front. Doing a little bit of a turn. It still has to go further forward just yet. Actually, that's about as far. I'd like to get that on a little bit further. We're just not quite where I'd like to be just yet. Right, I'll get the camera out of the way for a moment and I'll come back. Right, so that's the top shaft done. If I get them back into neutral, that's good. I've got the bearing right up on that lip there. So we're at a stage now where we can roll the box on its end and we can put the epicyclic unit on the back here. Okay, we're at the epicyclic end and we start off with this shim. Now you can see where that shim's been sitting on the back of the bearing there. So we pop that on there and then we have a plate and we can see where the plate's been sitting. So looks like the plate will sit there. Now if I put that, we'll try and line the holes up as we go. That's if we can. And we have an epicycle and they have thrust washers on them, so if we put the thrust washer down over there, we should then be able to bring it down in place and hold it in line. I'll just line up this gasket a little bit, try and make sure we keep it all how we like it. Now on top again, we have an epicycle thrust. Now over the top of that, we have the main gear. Now the main gear has dowels on it. You can see the two dowels. If I get them in the line, you can. So it looks like we have a dowel down the bottom, down here, another one here. So we'll try and line all them up if we can. There we go there. Now this centre gear, he sits down inside there, but it'll probably come out again anyway once we get the selector fork there. Let's see if I can line this damn thing up properly again. There we go. And once more we have another plate here, and you can see where the thrust ran on this side. And this plate has no holes for the thrust, so it has to be the top one here. And I think it sits something like that from memory. Now we have a couple of 3/8 bolts to hold all that together. I should have another one here somewhere for this. I'll see if I can find it. Well, I'll have to have a look at that, see what I'm doing there. Okay, we're sliding the selectors in now, and I've put the high-low one in, and I've tightened up the little grub screw there. Now this little fella here, oh, it's a bit firm. I think he would have went there. And we haven't got any detents up the front there yet, and all we have to do for this is just bring the shaft forward enough. I'll just we just need to bring him forward, or bring this gear back, so that we can line up the hole. Looks like it's going to need a little bit of a tap. That's got that lined up, so we pop the retaining screw in. We don't have to worry about the lockout at the back at all yet. So we just wiggle that around a little bit until we know that it's gone home properly. Just firm for the moment, make sure that slides okay. There we go. That's a good thing. The next one, we drop him into the groove into the gear. Once again, look to line up the hole for the selector. I'll find a 3/8 spanner instead of a 7/16 one. They don't have to be real tight, these. They've got to be firm. So we wire them up anyway. Okay, now that looks good. A little bit of rusty stain on it, but I didn't want to bead blast everything on it, and I thought there was no need for that. That goes in there. Okay, we'll come around the back and we'll pop that lockout in. Right, with this lockout here, it just sits down. We have to bring both gears or both shafts back until we see the little groove in them line up. And what we can do then, we can just bring this forward and line that up. If we can take the weight off it a little bit. Normally you have this sitting down nice and level. And that's it. I might put a couple of spring washers there, but with that lockout being in place, you can only ever move one shaft at a time. So see, this shaft locked in there now, and this one can move. So it's vice versa, so you can only select one gear at a time. So look, I'll tighten all this up. That's probably all we're going to do with the gearbox. The throw out bearing we can pop on any old time. You've seen that 100 times.